Hey, what's happening, all you beautiful people? Welcome back to Piston Broke, a channel where I generally destroy my stuff on the weekends and then I come back to work on Monday and fix other people's stuff professionally. If you're new here, please consider subscribing, liking, and hitting that little notification bell. All that means is next week when I upload a video, you get to see it for free. It costs you nothing and it helps me out immensely. On this episode of Fix It Friday, what we're going to be doing is we're diving back into Nate's Ranger. This Ranger, I've done a couple episodes on it already, so if you haven't watched those, make sure to go find the folder, Fix It Friday, have a look, and then come back and watch this one. But what we're doing on this episode is we're going to be going ahead and we're going to be doing full rockers and cab corners on this guy. We've got some aftermarket stamped rocker panels here that we're going to be cutting and fitting into place. I'm going to try and do this job as a no-fill job. So basically what that means is the best possible metalwork that I can with no filler. I'll go through the process exactly how I'm going to achieve that, and I'll show and explain my system the best that I can. So once again, I appreciate you guys for tuning in, so let's get to it. All right, so first things first is I've got to figure out exactly where and how I'm going to cut this thing out. Jesus, there's a hole right there. The best route to go about it is we're going to take this stamp piece and we're going to get it set onto the panel, and it fits fairly decent. The only thing is we've got an arc here, so the panel itself is kind of arcing out, but that's to be expected because this body line here is getting stretched over this. But all in all, it does fit pretty good. The main reason why I want to replace this section, this cab corner, is because there has been work done on this before, and the reasoning is right here. I'm not the type of guy to talk down on anybody else's work, but as you're able to see in this section here, that's not good. Like I say, whatever, it's worked. Whoever did it before, that's how they did it, and that's fine. But for me, I'm not too keen on that, so I'm going to go ahead and I want to get this section here cut out. So the plan moving forward with cutting this section out is I've got to get the reproduction panel set and trimmed exactly how I want to set and trim this guy. I grabbed the wrong panel. So what my plan moving forward is I'm going to clean up the front edge and I'm going to cut this panel across and down, and then do my markings on, after I get this panel trimmed, do my markings on the exterior of the extended cab panel, and then that's going to give me the proper template to start removing the pieces off of the truck. I know that I'm going to want to be able to cut this down onto this main line. The reason why I want to be able to cut it down onto this main line is when I take that panel and I weld, this is going to be a lot harder area to deform. There's not going to be as much, it's not going to be as easy to shrink and stretch with the heat. We are doing a different form of welding. When we do this, we're not going to be doing standard MIG welding. We're going to be doing a silicon bronze, but that's going to just allow a nicer edge to clean up and go against, rather than trying to cut in here and get in all these angles. This section right here itself is good. And then we're going to come through, find the spot welds, and knock these spot welds out and get the panel set. So I'm going to start trimming this panel so I can get it sitting on top of this how I want it to replace it. Okay, so I have a plan on what I'm going to be doing with this piece right here. First thing, I need to get this edge taken down and off, so then when I test fit it onto the panel here, we're not trying to stretch the panel when we go to start marking where we're going to cut. So I've got it clamped, and what we're going to do is we're going to start to take the zip disc and we're going to cut it along this edge. I'm going to leave a little bit of material so then I can go through with the wafer disc and clean it up and get it as smooth and as straight as possible. We've got the panel all trimmed up. It's sitting a lot better than it was before. So as you can see, We've got our gap. We've got how everything's set. We have it sticking out here a little bit yet, but I'm gonna have to tweak that once the panel's in place. Biggest thing now is what I've got to do is I've got to trace down and find exactly how I want to cut this panel. And my objective for this is to try and get this cleaned up, this area cleaned up as much as I can. So I'm gonna mark this and trim it, and then I'm gonna trace it back onto here. And my plan is to come right into here, follow this edge up, round it, and bring it back over. So I'm gonna start marking the panel, get that trimmed, and keep test fitting it to make sure we're on the right track. So now that I've got it marked, this is what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna curve this corner. I'm gonna follow that body line down, arc it over here, follow that line down, and cut it out right there. That's just gonna give me high areas of strength, being that it is on a pressed body line, which is gonna help prevent the shrinking and stretching that I was talking about before. We have our panel trimmed up how I want it, so we'll get it set onto the truck. And what we're going to do is we're going to loosely clamp it on the bottom, and we'll start tracing out the section of the truck to remove. So now that we've got it all traced out, we know the section of the truck that we want to remove. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start taking these spot welds out. There's an inner panel in behind here that this is spot welded through. So we're going to grind those off. There's 2 spot welds here that we're going to have to try and take off. And then I'm going to cut this panel out, staying on the inside of this line, because when I traced it, I traced over the top of the other panel. So over the top of this guy, if I take to the top of that, there's going to be a larger gap. With silicone brazing, it's not that big of a deal. You actually want a little bit more of a gap than compared to standard MIG, but it's easier to take a little less off and then finesse and fine tune than it is to cut too much and then, well, you're screwed. So I didn't mark the front with marker just because of the fact that I know I'm going right down to this solid edge here anyway, so I don't need to mark that. I just got to trim that back. What I've done is I've got this all trimmed up, and you guys may remember me talk about before in a previous video that you can't trust anybody else's work unless you've done it yourself. And this is not a dig at anyone that's done this job or any job, and it's just when you're doing restorations and when you're doing this sort of thing, you don't know how it's done unless you've done it yourself. And this is a perfect example of that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and show you why I'm so happy that I decided to take this up so much higher than what initially it called for just on the back. And yeah, we'll go from there. So you can see that the actual inner structure of the inner rocker panel and cab corner has been cut. And it's not part of the structure anymore. It's just sitting there. We're going to be able to clean this up, so that's not a big deal. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to get that cleaned up, and I can repair this, bring it back, get everything nice and tight, and get welded in. But also, this whole section was replaced before.
And if you look inside here, they've got good penetration, but they've got these little hangers. And these are hotbeds for corrosion. So now that I've got this up further up and all cut out, I'm going to be able to go in here, and I'm actually going to be able to clean up their weld job from the inside, and then I'll be able to coat the inside of it here with a rust inhibitive primer, just so we don't have any more corrosion issues. But this is just another thing, like I'm saying, is it's always best to just go ahead and do it yourself, do it properly the way that you know how to do it, because of the fact that if I would have just called that good, you know what, we could fill up that little piece. It's not necessarily, doesn't look the best, but we'll put a little filler on there and we'll call it good. Everything's going to fail eventually, just because of the fact that things aren't done properly. Like I say, not a dig, but not that big of a deal, because we're in here now. We can do it right this way, and we'll move forward from there. Okay, so what I'm going to do here now is I've got the inner piece that was cut, that we ended up finding that there was some stuff going on there. So I got that cut, I got it taken out, and I'm just going to get it relined up, and I'm going to tack weld it into place. I've got the welder all set up here already. I got the silicon bronze and everything swapped over. So this is actually going to be a perfect test bed for me as well, because it's not a, well, it's an important piece, but it's not overly important that the weld looks amazing. So this is going to be a perfect test bed for me to test the welder, do my test passes, get everything kind of in place, and go from there. So I'm going to tack this in, silicon bronze it in, and we'll get that set up, and we'll start putting this cap corner on. Now that this section is all brazed in, and man, I just love brazing. It looks like little lines of gold. So now that we've got this all brazed in, I'm happy with that, where we've gone. I've done the cleanup here, and then I've taken my panel and I've ground it everywhere where I've got a contact surface and I'm going to be welding. The reason for that is when I braze, the capillary action, what's going to happen is the weld is actually going to go in and it's going to set in behind here, and I want to have no chance of porosity. So I'm going to take the inside of the panel like I've done here, and I've cleaned it all off. And the reason why I've cleaned it off here and on the bottom, and also cleaned the bottom of this and the mating surface of this, is once I get this panel set into place and we've got it sitting exactly where we need it set, and I start to braze it and I have it all brazed in, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take my resistance spot welder, and that's going to clamp in between, and it's going to come over top, and it's actually going to fuse the metal without any welding rod or without any filler rod. It actually just puts a very high pulse of electricity through and fuses the metal exactly how they were made. It's a very, very common thing. If you look, those are resistance spot welds where there's no filler and there's no welding rod. It's just resistance. So the metal is actually fused together by an electrical pulse. So that's how we're going to attach it on the bottom and this front surface. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to get all the inside of here corrosion protected. I'm going to put some copper weld through primer, and then I'm going to do some copper weld through primer on this section, and we'll get this piece put on. We've got the inside of the panel all corrosion protected, done with the copper weld through primer. We've got the inside of this all corrosion protected, set up with copper weld through primer. So let's get this panel set into place and we'll start getting it welded on. So we're just going to get this set into place where we need it.
get it clamped onto the bottom, and then I can try and manipulate it. So our biggest factor when trying to get this lined up is I'm able to manipulate this back section and this front section, getting it twisted in and out, but I won't be able to get this cab corner contour after it's welded. So that's going to be the first place that I want to get this thing set, is right into this section here. So I'm going to get it lined up the best I can. I'm happy with all of this thus far. So I'll get it set, and then I'll throw a tack on it, let it cool, release it, and then we can start looking at getting the entire seam welded up. What I'm doing is just going with my thumbnail and making sure that I'm not too far out. So if this is pushing out, I can give it a press in. And right there, we've got a really nice line. Bottom section here. So the biggest thing with panel fitment and what you want to achieve is you can press so that you can see that I've got a fairly decent gap here. Now I am brazing, so I am allowed a lot more of a gap because of the fact that it's a bigger rod and you kind of wash it a little bit when you're putting the panel in, or putting the filler material in. But another thing that you want to take note, another thing that you want to take note is you want your panel to naturally rest in a relaxed state when you're putting it in. So if you have to push down and keep it pressed down and you weld it, you're putting tension in this panel, and that's the last thing that you want. So you want it to be in a relaxed state, and you want it to naturally want to sit exactly where it's supposed to be. So this was, as you guys remember, this was pushed out quite a bit before, but now that I've got this bigger gap, I was able to manipulate that panel in, and I've got a great line of how the panel's sitting. This is really nice. This is really nice. So I can go through here and I can just start getting some tacks with the silicone, and then I can start to think about burning it in.
cab corner is all brazed in. It turned out pretty okay. There is a couple spots that I'm not 100% keen on. Just it must have shifted a little bit while I was doing it, but unfortunately, that's the name of the game. It is significantly better than the panel that was on there before. We've got a nice gold braze line all the way through. Everything fits really, really nice. Now what I've got to do is take the resistance welder. We're going to get a couple resistance welds there, and then one over here on this corner. Probably end up having to move the truck over to the welder because the welder won't reach all the way across the shop. So I'll get the truck moved. We'll get a couple welds on here, and this cab corner is done. Okay, so we got the truck pushed over to the welder. So I'm just going to get this thing set up and calibrated. So we'll get, that's the arm that we're going to be using on this rig. So then we have to press the button to align the head. So the alignment's done, machine has been calibrated, and it's a smart welder. So what it's gonna do is it's actually gonna measure the resistance needed and automatically adapt the amount of voltage and all that kind of good stuff in order to do a proper weld on that. So let's get a couple spot welds on here. All right, so first things first, I guess, get this mounted on that lip. There we go. So there we go. Just like that, we got ourselves a cab corner welded in Nate's Ranger. I can't be more happy with the result of this thing. It turned out beautifully. I wanted to do a no-fill cab corner. Unfortunately, there is going to be a little fill. You know what? At the end of the day, it's going to be significantly less than probably any of the other work that was done on this thing prior. So I'm very, very satisfied. We got ourselves a beautifully brazed in panel, OE resistant spot welds. We found some secondary or hidden damage in behind that we're able to remedy, get repaired, and bring back. So I'm super, super happy with that. The next video, I think what I'm going to do is just going to be a series just on this rocker panel, show you guys exactly how I'm going to cut it out, section it in, and the process that's involved there. Maybe try and do a no-fill on that one. We'll see what happens, but I can't guarantee it because, well, I thought I could do it on here, and it never happened. So yeah, with that being said, I appreciate each and every one of you guys that tune in. Like these videos, share these videos, subscribe to the channel, leaving me comments down below, private messages on Instagram, all that kind of stuff. It really does mean a lot. I was unsure how this series was going to go. Obviously, there's a few people that are enjoying it, so I'm going to keep rolling with that. So, guys, once again, thank you. I appreciate you, and we'll see you on the next one. Cheers.